Hello everyone and welcome back to Growing with TJ. My all-time favorite fruit to grow in the garden is the tomato. Now there is nothing quite like a homegrown tomato, and for you that have grown your own tomatoes before, you know you cannot beat the taste and the flavor. And if you are like me, you're in a lot of pain because you have not had a real good tomato for quite a few months. You know, the grocery store tomatoes, they just simply do not compare to growing your own tomatoes. So I want to take the time in this video and just discuss, the different varieties that I am growing. I got 14 here that I'm trying, and most of them are new varieties that I've never grown before. So I will be discussing a little bit about each one, and yeah, just if you like to talk tomatoes like I do, you might enjoy this video. One thing that I look for when I was searching the internet for, varieties of tomatoes, and there's a lot of them, so it can be overwhelming. But two things actually that I'm looking for is, good disease resistance or improved disease resistance. And second, I'm looking for varieties that aren't likely to crack. In my area, we get some good thunderstorms and some heavy downpours, and it just really can crack your tomatoes, and there's nothing really you can do about it. I mean, you can try and pick them a little early if you want, but if you're trying to keep them on the vine until they're ripe, you kind of run into that pickle where, you might get some cracking. So I really look for crack resistant varieties. Now, like I said, a lot of these varieties are new to me that I've never tried to grow before. There's a few in there that I've grown in the past, but for that reason, I do have a little cheat sheet here to help me remember exactly what that type of tomato is all about. So you're going to see me referring to that throughout the video just to make sure I get it right, since I got 14 different varieties here. First, we're going to start off with the cherry tomatoes. So let me get these out of the way. These are the cherries, and these are the bigger tomatoes right here. So this is the first timer for me. This is called the Mountain Magic Tomato. Now, the Mountain Magic Tomato is a high yielding tomato. They're rather small cherry tomatoes. I think they're about 2 ounces or so. They have a really good sweet flavor. And like I was talking to you about what I'm looking for, they have a nice uniform shape, and they're very crack resistant. And another thing about the Mountain Magic Tomato is they have a good resistance to early and late blight. So overall, you see they're crack resistant, they have good disease resistance, and that is what I'm looking for in the Mountain Magic Tomato. I have heard of people growing these and seeing the type of yields they get, and it is fantastic. So hopefully it does well for me this year. One other thing I like to mention is, for me personally, I like to find other, YouTubers that are around my area and see how they do with certain varieties of tomatoes. Now, if I know a YouTuber in, Jersey or Maryland when I'm in Pennsylvania, and they're getting high yields and the tomatoes doing very well, that's something I look at and like, all right, maybe I'll give that a shot and see if it does good in my area, because we're within a certain distance of each other. So that's another thing you can do if you want to try different varieties and just try and find, the best producing tomatoes you can find. That is one way you can do it. The second cherry tomato I have here is the Sakura F1 OG. Now, this is a very firm cherry tomato, and they can actually get pretty big, medium to large cherry tomatoes. The plant itself is very compact. They grow in good clusters, which is very nice. You can, harvest the whole cluster at the same time. They usually ripen about the same time. And let's see what else we got here. One thing I saw about these is they're very, one of the first to ripen, and they tend to produce all year long. So a very good indeterminate cherry tomato. I've seen a lot of research about these, and everything I've read or noticed is, they just produce very, very well. So going back to what I was saying before, good disease resistant, crack resistance, And yeah, high yields, producing all year. That is what I'm looking for in my cherry tomatoes. Next up, this one is from Baker Creek Heirloom Seeds. So this is an heirloom tomato, cherry tomato. This is the pink Bumblebee tomato. And this one is also a very early yielder. You can see it has like vibrant fire engine red, and some golden striping on there. And this flavor is going to be, very, they say bright, sweet flavor. So it's really going to give you a little punch, and you're going to really taste that sweet flavor. So I have seen many people grow these before. I don't know anyone that personally that have grown them, but I'm looking forward to the pink Bumblebee cherry tomato. The next cherry tomato I got here for you guys, I kind of have a love-hate relationship with this cherry tomato, and that is the Sun Gold cherry tomato. Now this is a very sweet, fruity, flavorful cherry tomato. It's, they're orange, kind of tangerine-ish orange, and they are one of the best tasting cherry tomatoes that I've had the opportunity to taste. Now, I have grown this many times before, and I will probably always grow this in my garden just because the flavor is that good. The big negative about the Sun Gold cherry tomato is that it is very prone to crack. And it happens often. Last year I had a lot of cracking with the Sun Gold, and you have a storm roll in, you get heavy rains, downpours, and if they're close to being completely ripe, they are going to crack on you. So that is a big negative to the Sun Gold cherry tomato. However, the flavor and the taste and the productivity is very good, and that's why I continue to put this in my garden regardless of the crack problems that they may have. So if you never had the Sun Gold cherry tomato, I'm telling you, this is going to be one of your favorites. You just kind of have to learn to deal with that. Hey, they might crack, and hope for not to get a lot of storms when you got a lot of ripe tomatoes coming in. And you can pick them a little early if you want. I prefer to leave them on, but if I know we're going to get some heavy rain, some storms, I will pick the ones that are very close to being ripe just to avoid their cracking. Next cherry tomato I have here is one that I'm sure many of you guys have grown before or have heard about, and that is the Super Sweet 100. And this is a hybrid cherry tomato, and it has excellent flavor. Very sweet. It's a red cherry tomato. They don't get, too big. That's, I'd say they're maybe a small to medium sized cherry tomato, but they are very reliable. They grow in nice clusters, and this will produce for you throughout all summer until fall, until you get your first frost. So the Super Sweet 100 cherry tomato is always in my garden, and this is maybe the 6th, 7th year I've grown this variety of tomato, and it is one of the best. And they can crack, but they are way less likely to crack than the Sun Gold cherry tomato. So I really don't have too much problems with cracking on Super Sweet 100, unless we just get a lot of rain all at once, and then you might have some cracking from the Super Sweet 100. Definitely a must grow in the garden. The last one I am growing for cherry tomatoes, this is actually a grape tomato, I'm sorry, but this is from Baker Creek Heirloom Seeds as well, and that is the Brad's Atomic Grape. See if I can hold that there, and you can see those colors right there. This was bred by Wild Boars Farms, and this is a very crack resistant tomato right here. But you can see the colors. I don't know if you can see that through the camera, but I'll put up a picture here as well. They have like a Technicolor shades and stripes. Very, very sweet, but you got, orange, you got black, yellow, purple. Very cool looking tomato. And I've never grown this before. I'm looking forward to growing it. They're supposed to be pretty high yielders, and the taste is supposed to be good. And just how they look, I mean, that's pretty cool. And that's going to be looking nice in the garden when I go out and harvest and I see all these Technicolor shades of cherry tomatoes. I'm really looking forward to this. Again, this is the Brad's Atomic Grape, and it was bred by Wild Boar Farms. All right, guys, that is all the cherry and grape tomatoes that I'm growing this year. So I got a wide variety of them, and they're all supposed to be pretty big yielders, crack resistant. So I'm looking forward to a great cherry tomato growing season. So let's move on over to the bigger tomatoes that I got right here. One thing I do want to say is you're not going to see any purple or, darker looking tomatoes in here, and not even some unique heirlooms as much as I grew last year. And that's simply because I do grow to put produce on a stand that I can sell to my local community, and I like to, give them a real nice price, because I think everyone should be tasting what, local and homegrown, fruits and vegetables taste like. So that is my goal with that, just getting people more aware of, hey, this is the good stuff, not the stuff from the grocery store. So what I've noticed is unique tomatoes, even heirloom tomatoes, there's not that much interest in them. And I don't think it's that they're not interested, they just don't know about it. So last year I grew more of those type of tomatoes, just to try to get people, more interested. I'd tell them about them and say, hey, there's other tomatoes out there besides red ones. And there's a little bit of interest, but just not enough. So this year I'm really trying to focus on red tomatoes, and, making sure that, people are getting some, very good tasting tomatoes. So in the past I did grow, Cherokee Purple, which is a delicious tomato, very, very good flavor. But they can have disease problems like most heirlooms, and they can crack. So I decided to hold off on them this year, but I promise you I'll be growing some of them next year. All right, so let's get into the larger tomatoes here. And my first one right here is the Big Beef Plus. Now this is a red, beefy type tomato, 10 to 12 ounces, so they're not huge, but very, very good flavor. And they say this one has, that old time tomato flavor. The one I'm talking about, and the one we love. So if you like the old tomato flavor, that real good tomato flavor, this is the one for you. And this variety is very disease resistant as well. I've grown this in the past. It produces very well. The plants hold up, and that taste of the tomato, you can't beat it. It just is that very good tomato flavor. So Big Beef Plus hybrid, and this is from Roar Seeds. You'll see a couple of them in my pack here, and that is just a local seed company that I like to get from to support local. Next up, beautiful looking tomato. This is the Big Boy hybrid. Now this is a slicing tomato, bright red with exceptional flavor, and they can get very large. You can grow up to 1 pound tomatoes with this variety, and they are more likely to produce higher yields mid-season, but they will, continue to produce throughout the year. But they are definitely more mid-season type tomato. And yeah, just a great slicing tomato. If you love tomato sandwiches like I do, then the Big Boy hybrid would be a great selection for you. All right, this next one, I've been seeing people grow this one over and over again, and it just looks so cool that I had to give it a shot. This is from Baker Creek, and this is the mushroom basket tomato. Now this one comes from Russia. They say this is a favorite in Russia, and you can see how it is ribbed, but very uniformed. So very cool looking, if you can see that right there. Firm flesh with a sweet and mild flavor. So I'm kind of interested to see what that tastes like. I've never grown this before, but mild flavor. I'm just kind of curious what they mean by that. But another thing about the mushroom basket, as you can see, I don't know if you can see that on there, but it is not very seedy at all. You don't see a lot of seeds in the mushroom basket. So I look forward to this one. I've been wanting to grow this for a few years. Finally pulled the trigger and got the mushroom basket tomato, and I will give a little review about that eventually. And hopefully it's a good tasting and high yield tomato. Now this next one from Baker Creek again. Can't go wrong with this, but this is the classic beefsteak. Now these can grow anywhere from 1 to 2 pounds. You know, they're big, like in the name says, beefy tomatoes. Again, old time tomato flavor that you cannot beat. And it's very well suited for my area, so I look forward to growing this. I've grown these before, and a lot of people like those big tomatoes. And this right here, the classic beefsteak, is right up that alley. So if you've never grown a beefsteak tomato and you like tomato sandwiches, like I said, this is the one you want right here. The next tomato I have here is the Chef's Choice Orange Hybrid Tomato. Now this is going to be about a 12-ounce fruit. You can see it's an orange tomato, very, very bright. And one thing about this tomato is that the flavor tends to be less acidic, and it's not really because it is a low acidity tomato, but the sweetness kind of overtakes the acidity flavor, and so the people think it is that type of tomato. But it's not my favorite tasting tomato, I must say. I would not grow this if I didn't have people that, you know, like to get them from the stand. And there's a pretty big customer base for the orange tomato. So I'm going to grow it because they've asked me to, and that's why it's going to be in my garden. The flavor is not, it's not like it's bad or anything. It's just not one of my favorites. That's all. Next up, I have been searching for a plum aroma tomato that really produces for me in this area, and that the flavor is, you know, is good. And I just haven't found it yet. I tried Amish paste last year. They just didn't produce very well for me. And that could just be, you know, on me as the gardener. You know, I see other people, they seem to be successful with the Amish paste, but I just was not. I didn't like the yield. So I'm always searching for the next good plum or aroma tomato. So this one right here is the Granadero F1 OG. Never grew it before. I've seen people be very successful with this plum tomato, but I've never grown it before. It's supposed to be very prolific, high yields, bright red, 4 to 5 ounce fruits. And let's see, they're thick walled, good for, you know, sauces and salsa. Very good disease resistance, especially to blossom end rot. So I'm hoping this is the year that I find the plum tomato that I will continue to grow throughout the years. And hopefully it is the Granadero F1 OG. All right, now we're coming down to the final two. Yeah, nope, I got three left. This is a Brandywine Heirloom tomato, and if you've never had a Brandywine, then you are missing out. Very good flavor, got the heirloom flavor, and you know, they do have some trouble with disease resistance and a little bit of cracking, but overall it is a great tasting tomato. So I suggest you grow the Brandywine Heirloom tomato. All right, these last two varieties are something that I've never grown that type of variety before, and two, it's not a type of tomato that I've ever grown. And all the ones that I've shown you in the previous year, they've all been indeterminate tomatoes. Now, throughout my whole gardening career, or whatever you want to call that, I've always grown indeterminate tomatoes because I'm like, okay, I want something that's going to continue to produce all year long and give me high yields. So indeterminate, you know, they'll grow as high as they can until, you know, they get a disease or the frost comes, and they're just going to continue to produce. But this year, I'm going to give determinate tomatoes a try. Now, they're only going to grow to a certain height, a set height, not grow any higher. They're going to be a little more bushy, and they are going to produce the majority of their fruit all at the same time. So that is something a little different for me. I'm looking forward to it. There's times last year where I just had kind of some lulls, I'd say, in, you know, tomato ripening. So I'm hopeful that, I'm going to do an early round of the determinate tomatoes here, and then I'll have some more coming in later. And hopefully just to be able to have more tomatoes on hand, and then I can, can a little bit. And yeah, I'm going to give it a shot. But yeah, with the determinate tomato, it's a very good one for canning because you're going to get a bunch of fruit at once, and you can just go ahead and process it. But let's get into the first one right here. And I don't know much about these two varieties, but I've just, through my research, I've noticed that they seem to be very good determinate tomatoes. So this first one right here, Celebrity Plus F1. So these are supposed to have very good improved disease resistance. And that is something I really hope is true. The fruit, they're going to average about, I'd say 7 to 10 ounces from what I've been reading. So they're not massive, but that's a nice sized tomato for me. And they have much better crack resistance than the original Celebrity. And I'm sure you've all grown the Celebrity tomato before. I've grown it the last 2 years. Not grown it this year, but yeah, determinate tomato, Celebrity Plus. I look forward to seeing how they produce and growing a determinate tomato. So hopefully it does well, and in the future I'll grow even more determinate tomatoes. Last one here, finally the last tomato. It is the Mountain Fresh Plus F1. Now this variety of tomatoes is said to do well in, cool, wet environment. So, it's not too cool here. The summers get pretty hot, but the springs can be cooler. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this does in my area. This is supposed to be a very productive tomato, and it's going to provide you a slicing type tomato, about 8 to 16 ounces. So they can get fairly large, but they can also be, on the smaller end at the 8-ounce mark. And let's see what else I have here. I just have, that it was developed by Randy Gardner at North Carolina State University. So that is who developed this determinate tomato. So yep, I look forward to growing these determinate tomatoes. If you have never tried determinate tomatoes, I suggest you give it a shot like I am this year. And hey, maybe it'll be a nice addition to the garden. All right, guys, so there you have it. All 14 varieties that I will be growing of tomatoes this year in my garden. We got some pretty cool ones in there, some unique ones, some that are supposed to be very high yielding, crack resistant, disease resistance. So that is all I'm looking for in the type of varieties that I'm going to grow. Is, I want to be successful. So anything that I can do to help me be successful, I'm going to do it. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you love tomatoes as much as I do. I hope you're growing a lot of tomatoes this year. It's really hard to, narrow down to only 14 varieties. If I wanted to and I didn't control myself, I would have 30 varieties. And if I had a larger garden, I certainly would do that. But unfortunately, I only have so much space for tomatoes, and I have to kind of narrow it down to 14, which is still a lot. And I look forward to reviewing all these at the end of the summer after I see how they produce and how they do for me in my Zone 7A. So if you enjoyed this video, give me a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel. This weekend we'll be out in the garden. I'll show you everything that's going on. I got stuff sprouting up, I got transplants, and we'll be building another raised bed. It's going to be a good time, so looking forward to that video. And I hope you guys have a great day and happy growing.